Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this great panel. Really honored to have the opportunity to talk to one of the co-founders of Elixir, Cole, on the growth of Elixir and the Elixir protocol. So just by way of introduction, my name is Daljeet. I'm one of the co-founders of OpenBlock Labs. We do incentive modeling and really go deep into the DeFi ecosystems. But yeah, I would love to learn a little bit about Cole. Do you want to start off with a brief introduction about yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Cole. I'm one of the co-founders and handle operations and strategy at Elixir. We're working pretty closely with Sui now. Miston Labs co-led our Series B round. So it's a pleasure to be here and connect more with the ecosystem. And thanks for moderating this. Just a little bit about my background. I've been in crypto since 2016. I was in high school at the time and started writing. My first year in college, I wrote the first DeFi-focused newsletter for Forbes. So that allowed me to get pretty deep into the space. Some of you might know me on Twitter. I'm Cole0x there. But yeah, worked with several funds in the past, mostly on the venture side, working with builders, working with projects, specifically in DeFi. So my focus has always been there from the beginning. So joined Elixir 2 years ago at the start. My co-founder, Philip, I've known him for 6 years now. I worked at his last company, which he ended up exiting. And it's been quite the ride, going from just an idea and zero to bootstrapping a seed round and taking that all the way to our Series B, which I believe is our 4th fundraise. So yeah, it's been a wild ride, but I'm excited to talk DeFi.
That's awesome. Yeah, I would love to go a little bit deeper into the origin stories of Elixir. What made you guys want to start Elixir protocol? I'm sure it's been the usual startup journey. How was that? And yeah, walk me through kind of the beginnings of Elixir.
Yeah, so at Philip's last company called Block Venture, they were one of the largest referrer of projects to GSR, which is a large traditional market making firm. And so he saw in depth sort of how that business operated and how these market makers were conducting business. And it was completely different than the traditional world where you have designated market makers for pairs, like on NASDAQ. Basically, you go to these market makers and they give you a call option. They put cash up, you loan them tokens, and then if they hit their strike price, they exercise the call option, and they charge anywhere from 2 to 5% of the token supply. And so it's probably the most expensive cost that a project incurs in its entire life cycle. But it's one of those things that really only founders and teams understand. The broader public doesn't really get how it works. So we saw there was this huge inefficiency there and thought there's no reason why a decentralized protocol couldn't achieve the same thing. So we initially started out building with a focus on market making for centralized exchange token listings. But that pivoted about 3 months in when the DYDX team reached out to us and had this idea. They're there's no reason you couldn't use this network to bootstrap liquidity on decentralized exchanges as infrastructure rather than a product. So that was kind of the aha moment where we determined the future of Elixir. So we've built this modular network that lives off chain. It's infrastructure that decentralized exchanges can integrate directly into their tech stack to allow retail users to supply USDC liquidity to perps or spot liquidity to order book pairs. So I think that's the origin story.
That's fantastic. Totally get the same point of view that, hey, this shouldn't be all done off chain. It shouldn't be done by these trusted market makers that sometimes you have huge counterparty risks and other issues. How do you see crypto and DeFi changing? We talk about slow chains and fast chains like Sui. How do you see the infrastructure stack changing so that it kind of opens up the design space for these types of products? it changes the design space for the types of trading platforms and dexes, and then changes the design space for to open up what we see as opportunity for Elixir. So maybe walk us through kind of these changes from the change of the infrastructure from slow to fast, to the change of the dexes, to the change of the liquidity provider.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to what you see with like tech, where you have this 0 to 1 phase where the growth is exponential, progression's exponential, you're seeing new innovations, and then it kind of reaches like a plateau point where the innovations aren't necessarily new, but the focus becomes more on efficiency. Sort of like iPhones, right? Like when iPhone came out, like you would see these huge jumps every year, and now it's like you don't really know the difference each year, but each one's a little bit more efficient. I think DeFi is kind of taking that same route, where at the start we saw just like pure innovation, a lot of like Ponzi mechanics and different economic incentive models, like most of which didn't work, but the market kind of figured it out. And at the end, it all kind of settles at this point where it almost becomes more like a TradFi replica, where you have like centralized firms kind of running things. Everything's kind of like a pay to play model where you have service agreements. Like it ends up kind of shifting away from this like grassroots community aspect. So I think the next phase is going to shift back towards decentralization, where it applies, and I think people are going to be more focused on things that they can actually get involved with and power. So that's kind of where we fit into the stack. I think we found a sweet spot that's helped us with our growth, where we're innovative and new and kind of 0 to 1. We're unlocking something that's never been unlocked before. But at the same time, we're also increasing the efficiency for users and also exchanges at the same time.
That's fantastic. Would you say that there was like a platform shift in the types of DEX formats that now enabled the opportunity for Elixir?
For sure. So we saw Uniswap at the start in like early or late 2019, early 2020. I think what's shifted the most since then is everything's airing towards order book models. Even AMMs are trying to kind of replicate order books. You see it with like Uniswap v3, where users are essentially setting limit orders. You see it with like Uniswap X, which is coming out. Like everything's shifting towards order books because they're just by far the most efficient trading venue. So I think that's the biggest thing, is we're going to see a shift away from AMMs and towards order book models.
Yeah, I totally see that as well, and especially with chains like Sui, where you can actually have order books run on them versus old, slower chains.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest difficulties that's blocked order books in the past is just transaction costs and speed. There's been workarounds for it. So a lot of exchanges on other chains will use off-chain order book modules, where essentially it's like a server, like a ledger of data that matches trades, and then they get posted on chain after the fact. But the issue there is that it ends up being just like a centralized server. So even though it works, it's still kind of like not in the spirit of DeFi, I guess. So on-chain order books are definitely becoming more popular, enabled by chains like Sui that have the transaction throughput and also cost requirements to effectively run one.
Maybe you could walk us through a little bit of the journey to finding Sui. What made you choose Sui, and how did you land on it? And how does the ethos of Sui compare to that of other chains?
Yeah, so we're an off-chain network. So the network lives in its own siloed environment. Validators are basically running on an individual server level. Just for context, what that looks like is the network's pulling data from order books, running it through a set of validators that are all running a unified strategy, and then that gets relayed back to the exchange level. And it being off-chain allows that to happen at about like 0.8 seconds per order update. But where we work with like kind of like a home chain is on the fraud proof side. So for every consensus set, fraud proofs are posted on chain. And originally we were thinking like Ethereum mainnet, but the issue there is just because of costs and transaction times, we would only be able to post consensus fraud proofs only when there's a dispute. So if one validator is saying something different than the others, fraud proofs would get posted. If it's unanimous, then fraud proofs just wouldn't get posted. But with Sui, we're able to post fraud proofs with every order, essentially. So we first met the Sui team after working with a couple of exchanges on Sui. We currently power, I believe, 70% of the order book liquidity on Bluefin, which is one of the bigger perp dexes on Sui. We're also working with the Aftermath team pretty closely, and hopefully Deepbook in the near future. So we got connected to the Sui team from there. We hit it off, and we also kind of figured out the more network level synergies that made sense for us. And so, yeah, they ended up co-leading our Series B, and we're super excited to work more closely with them in the coming months.
Yeah. I'm also very excited about the vision for Elixir. I see the opportunity where, look, DEXs and the way we exchange tokens is going to move towards the order book model eventually. And Sui is solid infrastructure to enable that. It creates fast. It's a very fast chain, very high throughput, and we can build a great exchange on it. And it's protocols like Elixir that are the perfect provider of, you have a decentralized liquidity network that is going to provide that liquidity to this order book. So it all makes complete sense to me.
Yeah, and I think one of the exciting things when we started working with Sui was wherever these fraud proofs get posted ends up being kind of like the security layer for all of our liquidity, no matter where it exists. So, exchanges all exist in their own chains and their own environments. We're working with like Hyperliquid, which is an Arbitrum L3, DYDX, which is on their own chain, Vertex, which is on Arbitrum, RabbitX, which is on Starknet. But at the end of the day, like, they can all live on their own chains wherever the teams decide, and we can power their liquidity. But at the end, the crypto economic security of their liquidity ends up being on Sui. Because that's where the fraud proofs get posted, that's where consensus ends up happening. And so that's sort of what we see as like where Sui kind of plays this crucial role, where it ends up being like this kind of hidden security layer for the majority of liquidity on exchanges that aren't even touching Sui.
So walk us through this creation of fraud proofs. So this is a decentralized liquidity network. Why are there fraud proofs involved here?
Yeah, so we're in mainnet, we're going to have a validator set with probably 30 consensus validators. It's a queued set, so if any of those go offline or get jailed, the next one subs in. About half of those will be institutional, and then half of those will be community run. And so what that looks like is the validator themselves stake Elixir tokens to the validator. Users can delegate to certain validators, and all the fees generated by the protocol go to the validators. So in that consensus set, they're all running a singular strategy for provisioning the liquidity on the exchanges. That strategy is basically like the Uniswap V2 equivalent for order books. So it's like a delta neutral, like middle efficiency strategy with the goal of just being like a core backbone of liquidity on pairs. With the profit center for LPs coming from the exchanges paying out rewards. So this consensus happens. You need 66.67% consensus for orders to actually get relayed to the exchange. Where fraud proofs become important is because all of that calculation and the actual consensus is happening off-chain, we need a way to prove that it's happening how it should be happening in an on-chain environment. So that's where fraud proofs come in. With Sui, we'll be able to post fraud proofs for every consensus decision. But I think where they're particularly important is on the dispute side. So if 3 validators have a different output than the others, Either the majority are passing like malicious orders, or the minority is just wrong. And in that case, there's like an auditor node essentially that runs a trusted computation environment where the output there is always correct. It compares the output from the consensus set to the output there, and if it matches, the order gets pushed on chain. If it doesn't match, all the validators that push the incorrect data get jailed, fraud proofs get posted, and their Elixir stake gets slashed.
Yeah, it's really phenomenal. I'm really impressed with the architecture of Elixir and just the overall vision. We do believe that order books will take over DEX trading. And there's going to be a protocol like Elixir that is going to power all the liquidity for all of these new exchanges, and and Elixir is putting all the fraud proofs on Sui. I just want to underline this, and what that enables is potentially all the crypto economic security that is required for these liquidity on all these different venues, chain agnostic, would be put into Sui. And it's a very huge grand vision, and I'm super impressed with it. So I wanted to underline it. So tell me more about where does this go from here? You said there's a UniV2 market making strategy that's kind of being used right now. What are some of the feature enhancements that are coming down the pipeline for Elixir?
Yeah, so number one, exchange integrations. Right now we're live with Bluefin on Sui, RabbitX, Vertex. But we have a lot in the pipeline. Most notably, probably DYDX v4, where we're going to power their permissionless markets. So their vision is that users can come and create either spot or perp pairs for any asset that has some sort of source of truth for pricing somewhere else, and do so permissionlessly. So they're working with decentralized Oracle providers. Where we're going to fit into that is for bootstrapping liquidity to those pairs. So essentially, we enable like what Uniswap enabled for just brand new pair creation. We're going to be enabling the same thing, but for order books. So we're super excited about that for both perps and spot. We also recently launched ELX ETH about 3 weeks ago. What that is users deposit ETH to mint ELX ETH. Right now, they're being subsidized by our potions, which is like our version of a point system leading into mainnet. But essentially, what ELX ETH will be once mainnet goes live is kind of this basket of like smart liquidity that will get routed by the network to pairs on partner exchanges that need liquidity. So if there's a pair that has a lot of, like, let's say like Dogecoin's pumping or whatever, and there's a pair on one of these exchanges that doesn't have much liquidity but has a lot of trader demand, that liquidity would get routed to that pair. The order books would be built up, and then those users would take advantage of incentives from the exchanges. So it's been 3 weeks, and there's already about $130 million of ETH deposited there. And for reference, like actual order book liquidity, like dollars on the books at any time across all decentralized exchanges, is usually around like 250 million. So with ELX ETH, I think we'll probably represent like at least half of all, or if not the majority of all order book liquidity on decentralized exchanges.
Wow. It's already taken over such a large percentage of order book exchanges. In my mind, most of the liquidity and volume, most of the volume will move over to concentrated liquidity and then order book exchanges in DeFi. It's just because the price execution is better. And with that, there would be no reason for a liquidity provider to provide liquidity to an older DEX. And so you could see this huge migration over to all the volume going to order books, and Elixir being the market maker under the hood and the liquidity provider for all of DeFi. So I think you have a great stat for order books. Personally, I see even larger vision of this is the stat for all of DeFi. We should be tracking kind of Elixir on what percentage of TVL of all of DeFi is really going to be powered through Elixir. So it's a very impressive vision. would you like to talk a little bit about the team, kind of who's on the team, how are you guys thinking about growing the team, things like that?
Yeah, so right now we're a full-time team of 17. We're expanding probably a few more roles in the coming month after our Series B helped enable that. But right now on like the business side, it's myself and Philip, who's our CEO, and Tim, who previously led crypto at Hudson River Trading, which is like one of the largest trading firms in the world. He led on their crypto side. And so the three of us handle pretty much like strategy and BD and partnerships and everything. And I think we've done a pretty good job with staying lean there, not adding too much on that side. The rest of our team's all on the development side. So we have our CTO Chris. He previously was a CTO at Tokensoft, and he used to be a white hat hacker. So he developed like the Slow Loris attack, which is like an Apache server DDoS attack that Anonymous used to take down the Green Movement in Iran. So that's pretty cool. So he has like a security background and deep technical background. So he's mostly the architect of what we've built and leads up all the devs. We recently built out an integrations team. So the core team's working on protocol development. The integrations team works with our partner exchanges to get everything integrated. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. We're based in New York, so we have an office there. We're trying to push everyone in person, which is pretty difficult to do. If you start remote, it's tough to switch, but we're doing our best. So it's exciting watching it grow.
Fantastic. And then how are you connecting to the other DeFi protocols within Sui? How are you working with them? And how has that been so far?
Yeah, so it's been awesome. Right now, the only one that we're live with is Bluefin. So they're a top-notch team. They have a perp dex. I think it's one of the biggest right now on Sui. And we have, I think, nearly $10 million of deposits there. So we represent like 80% of their liquidity. The Sui Foundation was kind enough to help subsidize that. So users who deposit earn Sui tokens each week on USDC deposits, as well as pre-farming blue tokens, which aren't live yet, as well as like Elixir potions as well. So you get kind of three reward incentives. So people do like APR calculations. Like it's all very like speculative, but definitely check that out. It's pretty exciting. And so we've been working closely with them. We're being integrated right now into their front end. So users will be able to just go to their site and on each pair supply liquidity. Aftermath, we're working with right now. So that integration's in the pipeline. And then I think the bigger one we'll be focused on in the next couple of months will be DeepBook.
That's super exciting. DeepBook could potentially be the liquidity layer for Sui. Would you want to talk a little bit about DeepBook and how that integration is going so far and what your kind of vision is there?
Yeah, so we haven't really gotten started on that. We're constrained by the size of our team, but we've been talking to the Sui Foundation about what that will look like. I think long term, like order books as a layer is an exciting concept. Right now, we've really only seen like Orderly Network doing that, where essentially there's this one unified order book people are supplying liquidity to. New exchanges can come and just tap into that order book. And so all these exchanges would be essentially using the same matching engine on the back end. And I think DeepBook could achieve that. I think there's even potential for like cross-chain or like omni-chain order books like that. And that's exciting for us because we could allow users just to supply it to a single order book and power liquidity on potentially 10, 20 exchanges.
That's awesome. I guess we're running out of time here, but would you want to share any last thoughts, anything you would like to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I just want to thank the Sui team for having me and you for moderating. It was a good discussion, and thank you for everyone who listened. If you want to follow for updates, we're just at Elixir on Twitter. We try to stay pretty active there and share updates. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you, and I really appreciate you coming on stage. I can't underline how interesting and innovative Elixir is, and it's just a testament to the generation 2.0 of DeFi that is coming on Sui. And so I'm super thrilled to be working with Elixir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.